The air in my lungs vanished the very heartbeat my father's fingers clamped around my wrist. It was not the physical sting that stole my breath, but the cold, hollow certainty of what was to follow. The white marble floors of his Newark penthouse stretched out before us, a cold, clinical runway leading straight to my social execution. Every inch of that space was adorned with polished stone and imported Italian furniture that whispered of wealth far beyond the reach of ordinary souls. My father had built his financial kingdom by shattering anyone too fragile to strike back, and now it was my turn to be broken. "Tristan will be here in 10 minutes, he declared, consulting his watch with the detached efficiency of a man attending a board meeting, rather than a father about to hand his only daughter over to the most enigmatic and feared figure on the eastern seaboard. "Try not to embarrass me further than you already have, Rosalie." I opened my mouth to ask what my transgression had been this time, but the answer was etched into the very silence of the room. My crime was my existence. My stepmother, Vivian, lingered in the doorway of the drawing room, her face a masterpiece of surgical perfection and studied neutrality. She had long since abandoned the pretense of maternal care, specifically since she had provided my father with the perfect heirs, a son and a daughter who looked as though they had stepped out of a luxury magazine. His first marriage, the one that produced me, had failed to yield the beautiful, photogenic children he craved. I was 26 years old, and I had been erased from every family portrait since the age of 8, when my father decided I was too plain, too unfortunate in appearance to be seen by his peers. "He will be disappointed," I whispered, my voice miraculously steadier than the trembling of my hands, "when he sees the quality of the payment you are offering." My father's laughter was as sharp as a razor's edge. "Tristan Thorn does not get disappointed, Rosalie. He is the vampire king, the sovereign of the night. He gets even, and you are precisely the kind of restitution he deserves for what I did." Note the phrasing. What he did, not what we did. I had learned that lesson in my infancy. My father's sins were a debt that I was born to repay with my very life. The elevator chimed, a sound as final as a death knell. My father released my arm, smoothed his silk tie, and composed his features to meet the ancient power he had been foolish enough to cross. When the doors slid open, the temperature in the room plummeted until I could see my own breath. Tristan Thorn looked as though the very concept of shadow had been given a human form. He was tall, dominating the space with an effortless, terrifying authority. His skin was the color of moonlight on snow, flawless and impossibly pale. His dark hair was swept back from a face that belonged in a gallery of classical sculptures, the kind of beauty that served as a visceral warning of a predator. But it was his eyes that truly paralyzed me. They were gray, not the soft gray of morning mist, but the piercing, metallic gray of a winter storm or a polished blade, and for a fleeting second, they flickered with a predatory crimson light. Those eyes found mine across the expanse of the penthouse, holding them with an intensity that made my skin prickle with an unknown electricity. He looked at me as if he were memorizing every curve of my face, every flicker of fear in my soul. He was not looking with hunger, nor with the disgust I was accustomed to, but with a profound sense of seeing. Truly seeing. "Harrison," he said, his voice a low, resonant rumble that felt older than the city itself, a sound that vibrated in my very marrow. "I received your correspondence." My father's hand found the small of my back, shoving me forward like a piece of livestock at an auction. "As promised," he stammered, "full payment for the Portland incident." The Portland incident. The shipment of ancient artifacts my father had intercepted. the lives of Tristan's kin that were lost because of the secrets he had sold. I was the price for his survival. Tristan's gaze never wavered from my face as he crossed the room with the fluid, predatory grace of a creature that did not belong to the modern world. He stopped so close that I could smell him, scents of cedar, ancient parchment, and a cold, metallic tang that made my heart race. "Your name," he said. It was not a request. It was a decree from a monarch. "Rosalie," I managed to whisper. "Rosalie Voss." He repeated it, tasting the syllables as if deciding if they were worthy of his eternity. Then his eyes drifted downward, tracing the lines of my body with that same unnerving attention. The soft curves my father had spent 2 decades teaching me to shroud in shapeless fabric. I waited for the familiar flinch, the look of letdown, the tightening of the lips that signaled I was not enough. It never came. Instead, he reached out, his hand moving with a deliberate slowness that allowed me to retreat if I chose. He tucked a stray lock of hair behind my ear, his fingers surprisingly cold, yet firm against my temple. "You flinch," he murmured softly. "Who taught you to fear a touch that has not even begun?" I could not find the words. "I just learned," I finally choked out. A flicker of fury crossed his features, his pupils dilating until his eyes were almost entirely black. He turned to my father, and the very glass in the windows seemed to hum with his power. "The contract you signed, do you have the original?" My father pulled the parchment from his coat, his hands shaking visibly. Tristan scanned the legalities with an unreadable expression before folding them into his pocket. "This makes her mine," he stated. "Legally, spiritually, entirely." My father nodded, relief warring with terror on his face. As agreed. Tristan's hand moved to my elbow, firm yet inexplicably careful. "Then our business is concluded." "Wait." The word escaped my throat before I could summon the walls of my silence. "Is that truly it? No further discussion? No negotiation?" Tristan paused, his eyes locking onto mine once more, with an intensity that felt like a physical weight. "Your father forfeited any right to negotiate the moment he placed your signature on that document, Rosalie. You belong to the kingdom of the unseen now. The only remaining question is whether you depart this residence with your dignity intact or cloaked in terror. The choice belongs to you." I looked back at my father one last time, searching for a ghost of the man who had once held me when I was a toddler, the man who had told me stories before my mother passed, and he replaced her with a woman who valued appearances above all else. But that man was a phantom. The stranger standing there merely looked relieved that his debt was settled. "I will walk," I said, my voice gaining a fraction of strength. Tristan's lips curved into something that was not quite a smile, but something far more dangerous and alluring, revealing the slight, lethal edge of his canines. Smart girl. He guided me toward the elevator, his hand a constant proprietary presence at my elbow. As the doors closed on the only life I had ever known, I felt a strange shift within me. It wasn't a breaking, but a tectonic movement of my soul. We descended 42 floors in a silence so thick it felt tangible. I could see his reflection in the polished brass of the doors, watching me with a hunger that was tempered by a strange, ancient patience. He was a vampire king, a sovereign of a world I did not understand. Yet in those 5 minutes, I felt more acknowledged than I had in 26 years of living in the shadows of my father's greatness. The doors opened into a subterranean garage where a long black vehicle waited, looking more like a coffin on wheels than a car. A man stood beside it, older, his face etched with scars and eyes that seemed to have seen the end of the world. "This is Christopher," Tristan said. "He will be our driver." "Where are we going?" My voice sounded like a stranger's. "Home," he replied. "Home." A word that had no meaning to me. Yet the way he said it made it sound like a promise of sanctuary. I entered the car because there was nowhere else to go. The leather was cold, smelling of expensive cologne and a power that did not need to shout to be heard. Tristan slid in beside me, his presence filling the cabin, his unnatural chill radiating through my sleeve. Christopher pulled out into the Newark traffic, and I watched the neon lights of the city blur through the tinted glass. "You are afraid," Tristan noted. It was a statement of fact. "Wouldn't you be?" I countered. "Perhaps, if I were in your position." His hand found mine where it was knotted in my lap, covering it completely with his own. His skin was like marble, yet there was a strength there that felt unbreakable. "But fear requires uncertainty, Rosalie, and I am about to make your world very certain." He turned my hand over, his thumb tracing the intricate lines of my palm. "You are mine now. That means you are protected. You are valued. You are kept from harm by the strongest force this world possesses. You do not even know me," I whispered, looking at our joined hands. "How can you value a stranger?" His smile was sharp enough to draw blood. "I know more than you think. I know your father cast you aside because he is too blind to see the treasure he possessed. I know you expect pain when someone reaches for you. I know you see a mistake when you look in the mirror. Shame is a heavy burden, Rosalie, one you shall no longer carry in my house." My breath hitched. "You saw all of that in a few minutes?" "I have been observing you for much longer than 5 minutes," he admitted, his thumb moving across my knuckles with a gentleness that was devastating. "When I investigate a man who betrays me, I investigate his secrets. And I found you, the daughter he kept hidden in the attic of his life, the one he dressed in shadows and kept out of the light." Tears pricked my eyes, and I hated them. "I am nothing," I said, the words a habit. "He lied to you," Tristan said, his voice dropping to a rough, low frequency. "And I am going to spend as long as it takes proving that to you." We drove for over an hour, the urban sprawl of the city gradually surrendering to industrial zones, and then finally to a landscape of dense, ancient woods I did not recognize. We turned down a long, winding private road, passing through iron gates that seemed to open of their own accord. The estate that emerged from the mist was not a house, but a fortress of glass and dark stone, nestled into acres of land that felt as though they belonged to another century. It was modern, yet Gothic, a palace designed for a king who understood that true power whispered. "Welcome to Ridgecrest," Tristan said, as the car came to a halt. "Your new beginning." Christopher opened my door, offering a hand with a courtly grace that felt entirely genuine. I stepped out into the biting winter air, the scent of pine and old snow filling my lungs. A woman stood at the massive front doors, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun, her eyes sharp and knowing. "This is Genevieve," Tristan introduced. "She manages the estate. If you have a need, you go to her." Genevieve's expression softened as her gaze fell upon me. "Welcome, Miss Voss. I have prepared the Azure Suite for your arrival. Just Rosalie, please." I replied, "Of course, Rosalie." She stepped aside, gesturing for us to enter. "Shall I show her the grounds later, Your Majesty?" "First my study," Tristan interrupted. "We must establish the foundation of our arrangement." My stomach tightened as I followed him through an entry hall that was larger than any home I had ever inhabited. We passed rooms filled with shadows and light, windows that looked out onto gardens illuminated by unseen sources. Everything was controlled, perfect, and designed to remind one of their own insignificance. His study was a sanctuary of dark wood and leather, dominated by a desk carved from a single slab of obsidian. He gestured for me to sit in a velvet chair while he poured a deep crimson liquid into 2 crystal glasses. "You do not have to drink," he said, handing one to me, "but I suspect you will find it grounding." I took the glass, our fingers brushing, and that same spark of electricity traveled up my arm. He leaned against the edge of his desk, his storm-gray eyes boring into mine. "I am going to give you rules, Rosalie. Not to control you, but to ensure your safety. Do you understand the difference?" "No," I admitted. "You will." Rule 1. You do not leave these grounds without my explicit permission. Not the gardens, not the forest. Nowhere. "So I am a prisoner," I concluded. "You are protected," he corrected. "There is a vast difference." "Is there?" I asked. His smile was dangerous. "You will learn. Rule 2. You are never to speak of who I am or the nature of my business to anyone outside this house. Not in letters, not on a phone, not even in the quietest whisper. I don't even know who you are," I reminded him. "You will in time." Rule 3. No one touches you without my permission. Not my associates, not the staff, no one. The way his voice dropped when he said those words sent a shiver of heat through my core. "And if someone does?" I asked. "Then I show them what happens when someone attempts to steal what belongs to the Vampire King. Mine." He kept using that word as if I were a prize he had won. "What about you?" I dared to ask. "Do you touch what is yours?" The air in the room became charged, thick with an ancient, predatory energy. "When you are ready," he said, his voice a gravelly whisper, "I will touch you in ways that will erase every insult and every moment you felt less than whole. But not until you understand that when I claim something, it is for eternity." My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. "I don't understand why you care," I said, searching his face. "Why do I matter to this empire of yours?" Tristan pushed off the desk and knelt before my chair, bringing us eye to eye. Up close, I could see the faint silver scar through his eyebrow and the darker flecks of charcoal in his iris. "When I was 15 years old," he began, his voice raw with a truth he likely rarely shared, "my own family cast me out. Not for money, but because I was changed into this, a creature of the night. I spent 7 years being dismantled and rebuilt into something lethal, something that could survive the darkness." I gasped at the honesty in his tone. Every single day, I was told I was a monster, that I only mattered when I was causing pain. His hand came up, cupped my cheek with a tenderness that contradicted the violence of his story. His skin was cold, but it felt like the only solid thing in my world. Then, one day, I took the throne and built my own world. I swore that no one would ever make me feel worthless again. "Rosalie, you matter to me because I recognize the fire in your eyes. The fire of someone who has been told they are nothing but refuses to go out. When I look at you, I see someone worth guarding, someone worth cherishing. I should have pulled away. I should have protected myself with the cynicism that had been my only armor for 26 years. Instead, I leaned into his cold palm, allowing myself to believe, if only for a second, that I was not a mistake." He stood abruptly, as if the contact were as dangerous for him as it was for me. "Genevieve will show you to your quarters. Rest now. Tomorrow, we begin the process of rebuilding you. Rebuilding me into what? I asked. Into the woman you were always meant to be before your father tried to extinguish your light. He departed before I could ask for clarification. Genevieve appeared in the doorway, her presence calm and steady. This way, Rosalie. I followed her up a grand staircase that spiraled like a work of art, down corridors that seemed to stretch into infinity, until she opened a door to a room that took my breath away. It was larger than my entire college apartment. The bed was a sprawling sea of silk and velvet, and the windows overlooked the moonlit forest. The wardrobe is fully stocked, Genevieve noted. If there is anything else you require, simply use the intercom. Why is he doing this? I asked, my voice small in the vast room. Truly? Genevieve paused, her hand on the doorknob. Because Tristan knows the weight of being treated as a commodity. And he refuses to let that happen to you. Get some sleep. Tomorrow will be demanding. She left me alone in my beautiful, gilded cage. I explored the wardrobe and found it filled with garments in my size, but they were not the dark, shapeless things I usually wore. They were rich colors, deep emeralds, burgundies, and midnight blues. The fabrics were silk and cashmere, designed to celebrate the body I had been taught to hide. I stood before the full-length mirror in the silk pajamas I had found on the bed. I looked at myself, really looked, for the first time in years. I saw the curves I had been told were a failure, the softness I had been taught to loathe. Tristan's voice echoed in my mind, soft and strong and beautiful. I was still standing there when the door opened. I spun around, my heart leaping into my throat. Tristan stood there, still dressed in his black suit, his eyes finding mine in the reflection of the mirror. You couldn't sleep? His voice was rough. No, I replied. He walked into the room, his movements deliberate. He stopped behind me, the coldness of him radiating against my back. What do you see in that glass, Rosalie? He asked. A mistake, I whispered. A disappointment. Look again. His hands came to rest on my shoulders, cold and solid. I see a survivor. I see a woman who endured 26 years of cruelty and did not break. I see a beauty that your father was too small-minded to comprehend. His hands slid down my arms, his touch light but possessive. You are perfect, Rosalie, and I will prove it to you. I couldn't breathe. You're lying, I said, though I wanted him to be right. I do not lie about things that matter, he countered, his hands finding my waist. And you matter more than you can fathom. Why? I asked. You don't know me. I know you flinched, which means you were taught to expect pain. I know you packed nothing because you've learned not to get attached to things that can be taken away. I know you see a mistake in the mirror because your father succeeded in his malice. His grip tightened slightly, but I also know that you are still standing. That takes a strength most people never find. I met his eyes in the mirror, and what I saw there terrified me. A hunger, raw and ancient. You said you wouldn't touch me until I was ready, I reminded him. I know what I said, he whispered, his lips brushing the shell of my ear. This is not a claim, Rosalie. This is a lesson. Look at yourself. See what I see. A woman worthy of being worshipped, not hidden. I don't know how, I admitted. Then I will teach you, he promised, his breath cold against my neck. Every day, every night, until you believe it. He stepped back before I could surrender to the urge to lean into him. Sleep, he commanded. Tomorrow, I am taking you somewhere you need to see. Where? To the heart of my world. The following morning, a soft knock echoed at 7 o'clock. Genevieve entered with a tray of breakfast and a gentle smile. Good morning, Rosalie. Mr. Thorne has requested that you be ready by 9 o'clock. He suggests you wear something comfortable. I ate quickly, then returned to the wardrobe, selecting a pair of well-fitting jeans and a deep burgundy sweater that seemed to make my skin glow. When I descended to the foyer, Tristan was waiting. He looked formidable in all black, and my pulse quickened when his eyes swept over me with unmistakable approval. "Remarkable," he said simply. "Are you ready?" "For what?" "To see the foundation of what I have built." We drove for nearly an hour, Christopher maintaining a silent vigilance behind the wheel. The lush woods gave way to industrial landscapes, and eventually we arrived at a massive, nondescript warehouse in a quiet part of the city. "What is this place?" I asked as he helped me from the car. "The heart of my operation," he replied. Inside, the warehouse was a hive of terrifyingly efficient activity. There were offices, high-tech security, and people working with a focus that bordered on the fanatical. Everyone we passed stopped and bowed their heads in respect, a respect that was clearly laced with fear. He led me to a glass-walled office on the second floor that overlooked the entire floor. "This is where we coordinate our logistics," he explained. "Some is legal, some is less so. We deal in information, in protection, in the things the world needs but fears to touch." "Why show me this?" I asked. "Because you are a part of this now. I want you to understand who I am." He turned to face me, his expression grave. "My world is dangerous, Rosalie. It is often violent. There are those who would use you to strike at me if they knew what you meant to me. And what do I mean to you?" "Everything," he said, the word heavy with gravity. "That is why the rules exist. That is why I am so careful. In my world, weakness is exploited, and you are my only vulnerability." "I am not weak," I protested. "No," he agreed, stepping closer and framing my face with his hands. "But you are my weakness. There is a profound difference. If any harm came to you because of me, I would set the world on fire. Do you understand the stakes? I need you to understand the danger of being mine. Then, tell me everything," I challenged. And he did. He spoke of the Christopher family, not his driver, but a rival faction that had been attempting to dismantle his territory for decades. He told me how my father's betrayal had given them a window of opportunity. He spoke of the shadows he walked in, the deals made in the dark, and the blood that had been shed to keep his people safe. I listened to every word, absorbing the complexity of the man before me. He was no hero, but he was no simple monster either. He was a king protecting his realm. "Are you afraid now?" he asked when he finished. I thought about it, searching my own heart. "No," I said finally. "I should be, but I'm not." "Why?" "Because you showed me the parts of yourself that others fear, and you're waiting to see if I'll run. That takes a kind of courage, I recognize." He laughed, a genuine, rich sound that transformed his face. "Perhaps it is just madness. I haven't decided yet." We returned to Ridgecrest in a comfortable silence, and I realized something that should have chilled me. I was falling for a man who could dismantle me with a single word, and I didn't care. 4 days later, the peace was shattered. I was in the library, lost in a book, when the alarms began to wail through the house. The sound of heavy footsteps and urgent shouting echoed through the halls. My door burst open, and Tristan strode in, his face a mask of icy fury. "Get up," he commanded. "We are moving you now. What's happening?" "The Christopher faction knows you are here. They are approaching the gates." My blood turned to ice. "How?" "We had a leak. Someone within my inner circle." He grabbed my arm, not roughly, but with an urgency that left no room for argument. "We don't have time." He led me through secret corridors I hadn't seen, down into the bowels of the estate, to a panic room reinforced with steel and filled with surveillance monitors. "You stay here," he said, ushering me inside. "Do not open this door for anyone but me. Do you understand?" "Tristan, I'm scared," I admitted. "I know," he said, his voice softening for a fleeting second. "But they will not get to you. I will not allow it." He kissed me then, a hard, desperate kiss that tasted of cold marble and promise. "I always return for what is mine, Rosalie. Always." The door sealed with a heavy thud, and I was alone with the monitors. I watched as black SUVs breached the outer perimeter. Men emerged, armed and organized. The battle that followed was a blur of motion. I saw Tristan on the screens, a gun in his hand, moving with a lethal, terrifying grace. He was not the man who tucked my hair behind my ear. He was the vampire king, the shadow that his enemies feared. The conflict lasted 20 minutes, though it felt like a lifetime. When the smoke cleared, Tristan's men stood victorious, and Tristan himself remained in the center of the chaos, untouched and terrifying. He looked directly into one of the cameras. "It is safe," he said. "I am coming for you." 5 minutes later, the heavy door groaned open. Tristan stood there, his shirt spattered with blood that clearly wasn't his breathing heavy, his eyes still burning with the adrenaline of the fight. "Are you hurt?" I rushed to him, my hands searching his chest for wounds. "No, they didn't get close to me," he said, pulling me into a crushing embrace. "You are safe. That is all that matters." He held me so tightly I could feel the thudding of his heart, or the lack thereof, against my own. "Someone in my circle betrayed us," he whispered into my hair. "And when I find them, they will regret the day they were born." The following morning, Tristan called a meeting of his top 15 lieutenants. He made me sit beside him, a clear statement of my status. "Someone in this room," Tristan began, his voice a low, lethal silk, sold information about Rosalie to the Christophers. That information almost cost her life. Silence draped over the room like a shroud. "I am giving that person one opportunity. Stand now, and your end will be swift." No one moved. "Very well," Tristan said. "We shall do this the hard way." A laptop was produced, and the screens filled with data, text logs, bank transfers, and photographs sent to encrypted numbers. Every eye in the room followed Tristan's gaze to a man in his mid-40s named Arthur. "No," Arthur stammered, standing up. "It wasn't me." "You sent 19 messages to a Christopher operative," Tristan said, his voice devoid of emotion. "You gave them Rosalie's schedule and the estate's weak points for $600,000. "They threatened my family," Arthur cried out. "So you offered mine as a sacrifice to save yours?" Tristan stood, drawing a weapon with a fluid motion. "You betrayed your king. You put Rosalie in danger." "Please," Arthur pleaded, dropping to his knees. "We've worked together for 12 years, and in one moment you erased all of it," Tristan said. He did not hesitate. The sound of the shot echoed in the small room, and it was over. Tristan looked at his men. "Let this be a lesson. Loyalty is the only currency I value. Betrayal is a debt paid in full. Anyone who threatens what is mine will not receive a second chance." He took my hand and led me out, his grip firm and steady. In his study, he downed a drink in one go. "I am sorry you had to witness that," he said, his back to me. "Are you sorry you did it?" I asked. "No. He tried to kill you. He deserved far worse." I moved to him, placing my hand on his back. "I am not upset, Tristan. He turned, searching my eyes. You should be running away from me. I should, I agreed. But you protected me. That is the only truth I care about. A week later, my father called. Tristan handed me the phone with an unreadable expression. I answered, needing to hear his voice one last time. Rosalie, he said, sounding desperate. What do you want, Harrison? I want to make a deal. I can help you. The authorities are closing in on Thorne's operations. I can make it all go away if you come home, if you testify that he held you against your will. I laughed, a sound of pure, bitter irony. You want me to betray the man who has treated me with more respect in a month than you did in 26 years? He is a monster, Rosalie. He has manipulated you. He made me feel like I have worth, I snapped. You never did that. There was a long silence on the other end. Come home, he said finally, before he destroys you. I am home, I replied, and the only person who ever tried to destroy me was you. I hung up. Tristan was watching me from the window. He wants me to testify against you, I said. Will you? No, even if it means being complicit in everything I do? I already made my choice, I said. He pulled me into his arms, holding me as if I were the most precious thing in the world. Your father will not stop. He will use every resource to get you back, not because he loves you, but because losing you makes him look weak. Let him try, I said. I am not going back. Never. Tristan pulled back, his eyes burning with an intensity I hadn't seen before. Then marry me. I froze. What? Marry me. Not because I own a contract, but because I am choosing you. Because I want the world to know you are mine by your own volition. Tristan, we have known each other for a month. I have known of you for 8, he countered, and I have wanted you for just as long. If you think I am letting you go now, you haven't been paying attention. This is madness, I whispered. Likely, he admitted, but I don't care. Marry me, Rosalie. Let me give you my name, my protection, and everything I have. I looked at him, this dangerous, immortal soul, offering me the one thing I never thought I'd have, a choice. If I say yes, there is no turning back. There was no turning back the moment I saw your face, he said. I said yes. 3 days later, I stood in a private chapel on the estate, wearing a gown that cost more than a university education. There were no flowers, no music, and no crowd. Only Genevieve and 3 of Tristan's most trusted associates stood as witnesses. It was not a wedding in the traditional sense. It was a binding. Tristan stood at the altar, looking like a king from a dark legend. When I reached him, his hands took mine, and I felt them tremble slightly. The ceremony was brief and efficient. Do you, Tristan Thorne, take this woman? I do. No hesitation. And do you, Rosalie Voss, take this man? I looked into his storm-gray eyes and saw my future. Dangerous, complicated, and absolutely certain. I do. When he kissed me, it was a claim. A desperate, starving thing that stole the air from my lungs. Mine, he whispered against my lips. Finally, legally mine. Yours, I agreed. He slid a ring onto my finger, white gold with a large, dark diamond. I had this crafted the moment I decided you would be mine 8 months ago, he admitted. You were that sure? I was that sure I would make you want to stay? We returned to his quarters, which were now our quarters. At the door, he stopped. This is not just legal protection, Rosalie. This is real. You are my wife. Everything I have belongs to you. And in return, you want all of me? I asked. Yes, all of you. I don't know how to give that yet, I admitted. Then I will teach you, he said, lifting me into his arms and carrying me across the threshold. Starting right now. In the weeks that followed, the world seemed to shift on its axis. I was no longer the hidden daughter. I was the Queen of Ridgecrest. But my father was not finished. He held a press conference, looking like a grieving parent for the cameras. My daughter was taken against her will, he claimed. I am begging for her safe return. It was all lies. He is trying to force my hand, Tristan said as we watched the broadcast, making me choose between my business and you. What will we do? We fight back with the truth. The next day, Tristan's legal team released our marriage certificate, along with high-definition videos of me at the estate, clearly happy and unharmed. We released a notarized letter from me stating that I was there by choice and that my father had used me to settle a debt. The media went into a frenzy. My father's reputation shattered overnight. Reporters began digging into his finances, discovering the Portland incident and the massive debts he had accumulated. His stock plummeted. He called me one last time, his voice a hiss of venom. "You destroyed me, Rosalie." "You destroyed yourself," I replied. "The moment you decided I was worth less than a shipment of artifacts. I am Tristan Thorne's wife now, and I would choose him 1,000 times over you." I hung up, and for the first time in my life, I felt the weight of my father's shadow lift. But peace is a fleeting thing in our world. 3 weeks later, the Christopher faction made another move. I found an envelope on my pillow containing photos of me in Tristan's arms and a note. "We know where you are. One way or another, you will pay." I showed Tristan. His face went cold. "They have another leak," I said. "I know," he replied. "I have been feeding them false information to see who would bite. I found them last night. 2 more people." "Are they dead?" I asked. "They are being handled. But we need to end this once and for all." That night, Tristan launched a coordinated strike on 3 of the Christopher family's strongest holdings. I watched the monitors as his men dismantled their operations. By 3 o'clock in the morning, Vincent Christopher himself was brought to Ridgecrest in chains. "Your empire is gone," Tristan told him. "You have nothing left." "You can't kill me," Vincent spat. "I have protection." "You have nothing," Tristan countered. "Your people abandoned you the moment they saw you were losing." He turned to me. "Rosalie, come here." I stepped forward, standing at Tristan's side. "This is my wife, Rosalie Thorne, and you are going to apologize to her." Vincent's eyes were full of hate. "I'm not apologizing to a fat nobody." Tristan's hand was around his throat before he could finish. "Say it again," Tristan whispered. "Give me a reason to end you slowly." Vincent choked out an apology, and Tristan threw him to the floor. "Get him out of my sight," he commanded. "Let him live just long enough to see his world burn. Then, finish it." 5 years have passed since my father handed me over. I stand on the balcony of Ridgecrest, watching our daughter, Serafina, play in the gardens. She is 4 years old, a beautiful mix of Tristan's intensity and a softness that is all her own. Tristan comes up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and resting his chin on my shoulder. "What are you thinking about?" he asks. "About how far we've come," I say. "About how I used to believe I was a mistake." "You were never a mistake," he says, kissing my temple. "Your father was just too small to see your light." I turn in his arms, looking at the man who saved me by taking me. "We have built something real here, haven't we? Something clean for Serafina?" "Yes," he says. "The business is almost entirely legitimate now. She will never have to know the shadows we walked in." I look at my daughter, a child born into an empire of night, but free from the chains that bound us. And I realize the greatest lesson of all. Life has a way of leading us through the dark to show us that we carry our own light. For 26 years, I believed that my value was something determined by others, by the shape of my body, the approval of my father, or the utility I provided to those in power. I was a prisoner long before I ever met the Vampire King. I was a prisoner of my own shame and the cruel narratives projected onto me by a man who did not know how to love. But being sold was not my end. It was my liberation. It took a man the world called a monster to show me that I was a masterpiece. It took the stripping away of my old life to reveal the strength that had been lying dormant beneath the surface. True worth is not something that can be negotiated or signed away on a contract. It is an inherent flame that no one can extinguish unless you let them. I learned that love is not a soft, passive thing, but a fierce, protective choice. It is the act of seeing someone in their entirety, their scars, their shadows, their softness, and saying, "You are enough." Tristan did not fix me. He simply held up a mirror until I was brave enough to see the truth for myself. We are the architects of our own value. We can choose to be the victims of our history, or we can use the bricks thrown at us to build a kingdom. I am no longer the girl who flinches. I am a woman who stands tall, a partner to a king, and a mother to a future that is bright and unburdened. The scars of the past are still there, but they are no longer wounds. They are maps of how far I have traveled. And as the sun sets over Ridgecrest, I know that even the darkest beginning can lead to a beautiful forever. As long as you have the courage to believe you are worth the journey.